Over the last 8 weeks, we've been following many very strong draft league teams in a close, tightly contested VGC Regulation H style draft league season. We've seen so many players make so many strong plays with so many incredible Pokemon, but it's now playoff time. Half of the teams are out, and for the rest, it's single elimination from here. And let's do a quick refresher on the playoff field before we dive into the quarterfinals, which of course includes our very own Alaskan Absols, the team that I took over, partially with a co-coach, from week 4 on. But here's the field. They are in seeding order already, and of course, this being a traditional bracket, the team you see at the top of this list will play the team at the bottom, number 2 plays number 7, and so on. So quick refresher on who these teams are before we get going. Up first in the number 1 seed, we have the Dallas Dragapults, the only undefeated team in the regular season, but at this point, just like everyone else, one loss would end it for them. The Dragapults have, of course, very strong rain pieces in Pelipper, Basculegion, and Overquill, though we've generally seen the Overquill play a bulky support role. They have the duo of Hawlucha and Rillaboom that we've seen them bring to a lot of sets, with Rillaboom setting up grassy terrain to get the Hawlucha going with its Unburden. They have Riolu able to click coaching for like any of the physical attackers I've already listed, but we've seen it put in some other work as well. It can set up manual rain, I'm pretty sure. We've even seen it do some pretty decent damage some weeks. Raichu covering the various electric weaknesses, and then matchup pieces like Altaria and Donphan give this team, if it's positioned right, an answer to any situation. And you can see here, I'm still doing the featured Pokemon thing that I did in my draft recap. Back then, it was a Pokemon that caught my attention somehow in the draft that I wanted to see something from, but this time we're looking back at Pokemon that I found interesting to watch in the regular season. And for this team, there are a lot of options, but I'm going with Riolu because, again, we've seen Riolu, when it's used in VGC, is mostly just a coaching bot. But we've seen that be very strong on this team, and we've also seen Riolu take on a larger role and be used in some creative and actually fairly powerful ways. In the number 2 seed, we have the Flatland Flat Sands, 7-1, only losing to the aforementioned Dragapults. They, of course, have the always scary duo of Whimsicott and Hisuian Typhlosion, but we haven't actually seen them rely on that much, as the Whimsicott has often been paired with either Lucario or Mudsdale for a side beat-up strategy. Then they just have a really versatile, well-rounded Pokemon in Clefable that they can build for all kinds of different matchups. Strong, well-balanced offensive Pokemon in Kleavor, Jolteon, and Honchkrow, making sure that they always have a mode to deal with whatever kind of matchup they run into. And then some more defensive Pokemon here, including Scraggy, which has been surprisingly strong for them with Intimidate and an Eviolite and whatnot. Mudsdale down here in the featured Pokemon slot, because a lot of their wins have come from Mudsdale just grinding out an endgame that even looks kind of dicey at times, but this Pokemon is just so bulky and strong enough in this format that it's often able to hold on and win in the end. Number 3, we have Big Time Sandrush, one of the most well-rounded teams in this draft, but also one with a lot of tricks up its sleeve. Right off the bat, very strong Fire, Water, Grass Core, and Volcarona, Aqua Breed, Paldean Tauros, and Serperior, all of them able to play very offensively or play a bulky game and be tailored to whatever matchup they might be dealing with. Then we start to see some of the tricky pieces. We have the Espathra able to, of course, set itself up with Speed Boost and use Lumina Crash to help special attackers like Volcarona and Serperior get going. We have the Flamigo, which can run Scrappy if you want to cover for certain ghost types, but also can run Co-Star and copy Speed Boosts from Espathra or Terra Blast boosts from Serperior, or most notably, Belly Drum boosts from this Ice Q, as we've seen the Belly Drum Ice Q at least a few times this season. And we've also seen some other tricky game plans with Pokemon like Gothorita and Dracloak, and even if it starts to go off the rails, there's always a chance that Palmet will come in and revive a teammate. But the featured Pokemon here has to be the Ice Q, because that has put in work more often than I expected going in for sure. In the number 4 seed, we have the Varsity Farmboys, the first team on this list that ever made a trade in this season, and what a trade it was. The Farmboys have a really interestingly constructed team because they have one of the very strongest Pokemon in the format in Ursaluna, but none of its traditional supports. Instead, the Farmboys have, I think, trusted Ursaluna to be a threat and put in work itself because it's just so incredibly strong. and they've put other strong modes around it that can open up holes for it, keep the opponent occupied, and then Ursaluna can come in and do its thing after its teammates have cleared the way. So they have Sun mode with Ninetales and 2 Chlorophyll Pokemon in Vileplume and Scovillain, both with a number of interesting support options. We've seen the Rain mode with Politoed next to Empoleon spamming water attacks. We've seen bulky game plans with Garganacl and Bayleaf keeping its teammates healthy. Garganacl able to set up and just wear the opposing team down with Salt Cure. We've also seen Explosion, like Garganacl, just do a ton of damage to punch holes open. All of this can be supported by the Ambipom throwing off Technician boosted fakeouts. And yeah, this is just another really well-rounded team, and it's hard to find weaknesses to exploit with this one. Trust me, I tried to do it this week. We'll see how that turned out, but certainly I was having a difficult time in the builder, I'll tell you that much. But the Garganacl has to be the featured Pokemon here, because this thing is just so hard to break if you let it get going. But if you don't let it get going, if you focus on stopping it, that means you're leaving openings for take your pick of Ursaluna, Ninetales, Scovillain, Empoleon, etc. At the number 5 seed, we have our very own Alaskan Absols, recovering from a tough start to the season and surging into the playoff field here. Again, I took over as one of the 2 coaches of this team in week 4, and so I was able to make a bunch of changes to the roster. Well, a few changes, and one big one was already made. But with the team heading in more of a Trick Room direction with the Dusclops pickup before I jumped in, I steered it further that way by pairing Dusclops with Reuniclus. This enabled me to play hard Trick Room game plans with both of these Pokemon setting Trick Room and Reuniclus attacking under it. Girafarig also is available as another Trick Room setter. And then there are just 2 very strong offensive Pokemon here in Baxcalibur and Primarina, which hit extremely hard and with strong type coverage and can play in or out of Trick Room pretty easily. I added Hitmonchan as a matchup piece, covering for the weaknesses of Pokemon like Dusclops and Reuniclus. Everything is supported by Incineroar. There's a Fire, Water, Grass core completed with Sarina, and then there are still a few more tricky things this team can do, like how I brought Snover in Week 8 to spam Blizzard and Ice Shard. I felt a little bit weird about trying to pick a featured Pokemon for what has been my own team for the last few weeks. But then I realized it had to be Dusclops, because I have a confession that I don't think I've mentioned in a video before, which is that when I first stepped into this team, I actually wanted to drop Dusclops and pick up something else. And my co-coach didn't like that idea and talked me down. And I'm very glad that they did, because they were right. Dusclops has been a key component of this team in like every set that I've played so far. And I've been very glad to have it, and glad that I didn't get rid of it. In the number 6 seed, we have the Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold, and I'm just going to say right off the bat, the featured Pokemon has to be the Meowstic, and when I was looking back through these images and updating them for this video, it was wild to me to be reminded that Meowstic wasn't in this team's original draft. I'd forgotten that this was a free agent swap, but the Meowstic has really been kind of the key to this whole team through a lot of the season, being able to set up Prankster Psychic Terrain for Armarouge to boost its expanding force, and also Gravity to boost Flapple's Grav Apple, to make up for the accuracy drop that it gets from Hustle as well, and to buff the less accurate but extremely strong moves from Pokemon like Maushold and Wash Rotom. We've also seen the Dipplin use Super Sweet Syrup to give them those buffs. We've even seen Scarf Maushold a couple times, able to use that support to make sure that its Population Bomb will land without needing the wide lens. And then we've seen an attempt at a Mouseape mode with Maushold and Primeape. That one hasn't really worked out super well. But yeah, the Meowstic-centered game plans with the Psychic Terrain and the Gravity have been extremely strong, as has the Hisui and Decidueye. But Meowstic has to get the spot down here. And the number 7 seed, we have the Azure Bay Chatots. This is another team that has made a few changes over the course of the season, but also just is really well-rounded with a strong mix of Pokemon that is not necessarily easy to approach in the team builder. We've seen possible Trick Room game plans with Pokemon like Hatterene, Kingambit, and the recently added Sinistcha. More often, we've seen Gyarados set up and do big damage with It's broad coverage move pool and usually a useful Terra type. Ludicolo can also spam water attacks with it, but they've opened up some other avenues with recent trades with the addition of Pokemon like, again, Sinistcha, but also Skarmory and Rotom Heat Form. All that said, the Gyarados has been the key piece for this team, as you never know what set it's going to be running, but you do know it's always going to hit hard. And finally, in the number 8 seed, Drago's Strongest Warrior. Some parts of this look like a very traditional Sand team with the Tyranitar, Lycanroc, Corviknight, and the Gastrodon. Plus, of course, Sandaconda is a second Sand setter, and we've seen the Sandforce Probopass in, I think, 1 week, able to play in Trick Room and hit deceptively hard. But a lot of the game plans that we've seen work well for this team have involved Comfey, giving healing support to Pokemon like Tyranitar and Corviknight that just have very high stats and a lot of bulk and are able to set up and run through the opposing team. We've also seen Zebstrika put in work for on the speed control side of things, and we've seen they can also do speed control with Grookey and Frogadier with the Pledge combo, but Grookey with the Grassy Terrain and Fake Out support is also able to help keep its teammates healthy and help Tyranitar and Corviknight and even Pokemon like Probopass run through opposing teams. Pokemon down here has to be Tyranitar, though. I don't think it's the KO leader for the regular season, but certainly one of the KO leaders. It's Pokemon that's put in a ton of work for them all season long, and we'll see if it can do more of that in the playoffs. That's the field. Again, some matchups, as I mentioned last time, are repeated from Week 8. The standings just happen to work out that way. Dragapults versus Strongest Warrior played last week, and they'll run it back again this week. And same deal with Big Time Sand Rush and the Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold. Other matchups are Flatland Flat Sands versus Azurbe Chatots. But the one that we're going to start with, our very own Alaskan Absols taking on the Varsity Farmboys. We're going to watch that one first, and then the other sets. Let's get right to it. And we're here. I'm nervous. I did a lot of my building just last night, and like I said, I've made some choices. Okay. So, yeah, we got the possible, looking fun, we got the possible water spam that they used in the early weeks of the season with the Politoed and Empoleon. But then they also have a possible Sun mode in the Ninetales and Scovillain. So I do have to be prepared for both of those. And then, of course, Ursaluna is their number 1 offensive threat, and there's also Garganacl. I did say that I probably wouldn't bring Sarina if I didn't see Ambipom at preview. And Sarina is actually pretty strong into at least half their team, maybe 2/3, so it might be worth it. I still think I like Calm Mind, Primarina. The Scovillain could be an issue. And something like grass coverage on either water type could be an issue if they have like Grass Terra Blast or Electric Terra Blast or something, but I do still feel like that's my starting point here. Probably bring Incineroar. Of course, I do have to be careful into the Empoleon, which probably has competitive to get a boost from Incineroar. Excalibur is also interesting, given that some of these Pokemon are slower. There are a few different ways I could play this. I feel like I want to try to get Calm Mind Primarina going as early as possible, and then I can see how they are prepared for that. So let's do Hitmonchan Primarina lead. Bring Magby. I am kind of nervous about bringing Incineroar when they have the Empoleon. I'm going to say Sarina game 1, and can adjust afterward as needed. It is, okay, Politoed Garganacl. Garganacl is potentially an issue, of course, because it can run Wide Guard, it has super effective Salt Cure, like Salt Cure has those unique type matchups. It does extra residual damage to water types. So I have to watch out for that with Primarina. But I can fake something out this turn. I think it's actually okay to just fake out into Garganacl, because the Politoed is probably not an immediate offensive threat to Primarina. We could see a Terra Ghost or something here, but again, that's good to know if it is there. I'll just click Calm Mind. Okay, they actually protect Politoed and Garganacl. Okay, now they know about the fake out, but that's fine. I'm still worried about a Wide Guard, so I'm not really eager to Hyper Voice here. Let's knock off Garganacl. Assault Vest Hitmonchan actually has a lot of special bulk. It'll probably take an attack from Politoed. And again, I'm just covering for a Terra Ghost or some other Terra type on the Garganacl, and I'll double into it with the Moonblast. This is actually Terra Fairy, so Knockoff won't be all that strong into it either. Hitmonchan also takes a lot from that Muddy Water. Okay, Covert Cloak is the item. They do land Assault Cure into Primarina. That's not what I like to see here. It actually might be worth it to switch Primarina out, because I don't know how I win this endgame without it. Politoed being the fastest Pokemon on the board isn't ideal. I can get Serena in here, though. Or I can Mach Punch something. But I don't think Mach Punch is going to KO Fairy Garganacl. I think I am going to hard switch to Serena. But the only problem with that, then, is I'm letting Primarina take Salt Cure damage. I can Terra. I think I'm in a tough spot this game. Maybe I do keep Hitmonchan in. It'll get KO'd by Muddy Water, so probably we Mach Punch into Politoed instead of going for Drain Punch recovery. And I'll switch Primarina out to Serena. That's some decent damage. Hitmonchan actually survives the Muddy Water. Called that incorrectly. Garganacl gets a Recover. Hitmonchan also has taken an accuracy drop, and it won't survive a Muddy Water now, but we'll just Mach Punch Politoed again, and I could Trop Kick. Okay. I'll lose Hitmonchan here. If the Trop Kick connects, I can KO Politoed, but oh, it's probably not worth it. I probably should have attacked Garganacl. Yeah, because I've just let it recover up to full. I'll get Primarina back in. I'm going to call that they don't have Wide Guard. If they just haven't shown it to me yet, good job by them. But, yeah, I'm just going to... Nope, not Calm Mind. Hyper Voice. And Trop Kick. I'm going to Hyper Voice and Terra Water Serena, covering for an Ice Beam from Empoleon, and Trop Kick Garganacl. Try to take it out with the double up. I do miss the Trop Kick, unfortunately. But I do call the Ice Beam correctly. Hyper Voice does a lot. And I do feel more comfortable clicking that now that I've still never seen a Wide Guard. I'm going to switch Primarina out to Magby here because Salt Cure will KO at this turn, which means they can just protect their Pokemon. But I think I'm just going to run out of gas too quickly here. Do what I can to try to keep Garganacl somewhat low, but it does protect. Probably should have read that. Magby actually takes that Flash Cannon pretty well. Let's see what Helping Hand Trop Kick does, if I connect. Not enough. And so we're definitely going to lose game one. But I think Serena walls the Empoleon, and I don't think they have Wide Guard, so those are good things to know. Miss another Trop Kick. Her voice is doing a fair bit. Yeah, and Assault Cure will finish me off next turn. Okay, time to dig deep. I don't especially like Baxcalibur into what they brought here, but something was not working there. Do I bring Incineroar? Incineroar is strong into their Sun mode. That's the main thing it's here to cover for. They didn't bring it that game, and they really didn't miss it. I feel like Primarina, Serena are the right pieces this game, but I have to figure out what to put around them. It might be Hitmonchan again. Honestly, maybe I just leave the same Pokemon again. I'm going to bring Incineroar instead of Magby this time, though, to cover for a possible pivot to their Sun mode. Garganackle, Ninetales, yeah. We know that Hitmonchan... I don't know that's true. We know that I'm having trouble speaking here. The Garganackle is actually really hard to deal with because I can bring Incineroar in, yes, but Incineroar isn't an offensive threat into Garganackle, and of course it'll take a lot of damage from Salt Cure. But I think that is correct here. I don't think I can just leave Primarina on the field. So let's fake out 9-Ganackle and switch to Incineroar. I think they'll both protect. Nope, I was wrong, so I missed a chance to land a Drain Punch there. Bit unfortunate. Here I'm threatening a Parting Shot or another fake out. I'll go for the Drain Punch here. And I think I will just Parting Shot. Looks like I'll get Scovillain with that. The problem is I wanted to get Serena in here, but the Scovillain is a threat to it both before and after Terra, so I'm going to go Primarina, and then I'm just going to pivot right back to Incineroar, which is really not ideal, but... Actually, I could Moonblast Garganackle here. It's a little bit risky, but I'm just going to Drain Punch and Moonblast. Ah, they redirect. Okay. It's really bad. Okay, now I'll get Incineroar back in. I still don't want to leave Primarina on the field with the Salt Cure damage racking up, and let's just get rid of the Scovillain if it stays in and doesn't protect. Or breaking the Garganackle, maybe I needed even more pieces to be able to throw at it. The Terra Fairy was very smart on their part, though. That's, I think, one of the toughest Terra types for this team that I prepared to deal with. And hey, sometimes your opponent just preps well. There's only so much you can do. Also, I just realized I found out in Game 1 that the Garganackle has Covert Cloak, so there was no sense in trying to fake it out, but I forgot. So I'm up 4 Pokemon to 3 here, but I still feel like I'm on the back foot. I can try to fake out Ninetales here and get a Drain Punch into Garganackle. They might Terra Fairy. Maybe I Drain Punch Ninetales instead. Good chance it protects, though. I'm going to try into Garganackle. They protect Garganackle. Okay. At least I stopped Ninetales from moving. This might get the Terra Fairy out now. Unfortunately, the sun is gone, so I can't throw a sun-boosted Flare Blitz at it. I'll try to Drain Punch Ninetales here. And I'll go for another Parting Shot to Garg this time. They Will-O-Wisp Hitmonchan, so that's going to nerf it for the rest of the game. But this will give me Sarina now. And I can Terra Water. Start throwing off Trop Kicks, I guess. But Hitmonchan, yeah, Hitmonchan is in a bad spot now. Salt Cured and burned. Let's do what damage I can to Ninetales. And I'm actually going to protect Serena this turn. See how they try to deal with it. Switch out to Ursaluna. So here's where it's a problem for me that they've nerfed my Hitmonchan, huh? The Drain Punch still does decent damage, and they commit the Terra Fairy to Garganackle, so I know that I have super effective coverage into the Ursaluna. I think it probably protects this turn. Do I want to read that? Here's the thing. I think Drain Punch and Trop Kick. The only thing that I have going for me against this Garganackle is that Salt Cure does take time to accumulate its damage. I think if I do actually connect into the Ursaluna with these attacks, I'm in a good position. If Ninetales switches in and I hit it with these attacks, that's very helpful as well. A Protect is the only on Ursaluna is the only problem for me here, but even then I think I can recover from it. And they actually do just let me land the Trop Kick and the Drain Punch, so Ursaluna is down. breaking Garganackle is still such a problem. As, okay, they get rid of Hitmonchan, but Hitmonchan honestly put in a lot of work for being burned like that. And I'll go Incineroar here. They'll set the sun back up because they have to bring Ninetales in. And I'm just going to go right for Flare Blitz and Terra Water Trop Kick into Garganackle. The Flare Blitz is sun boosted, but I thought about putting a bunch of attack investment on this Incineroar, and I didn't end up doing it, so that might come to bite me here. We do more than half. It's not going to click Recover because it was a full. It can protect this turn. So I think here I go Primarina, preserve the Incineroar, knock off Ninetales, expecting the Garganackle to protect, and then I double into Garganackle to try to KO it next turn. Yeah. They burn Sarina, that's... yeah. Okay. I didn't really have a way to cover for that. Well, I guess I could have... I guess I should have protected Sarina. But maybe I'll get a crit or something. Let's just double into Garganackle here. I also could have Acupressured Primarina and hoped for a special attack boost, but I think this is better. And we do break Garganackle, and I think that'll be enough to win game 2, but man, is this matchup hard. And yeah, we'll just Hyper Voice and knock off here. Okay, so they beat me pretty handily with the Rain mode, and they lost a tough one with the Sun mode. That might mean that they go back to the Rain in Game 3, but I don't know that I can count on that. It might be worth bringing back Excalibur just to have that strong attack to throw off into Politoed, Ninetales, or Scovillain. Of course, I can't Glaive Rush the Garganackle safely, and the Empoleon kind of walls back Excalibur, well, to an extent. But I feel like if I think they might go back to the Rain mode, I don't feel like I need a Fire type here. It is easier to switch Incineroar in on the Ninetales than some of my other stuff. But of course, Excalibur also can't get burned. I could potentially switch it in on a Will-O-Wisp and get a Thermal Exchange boost. So I'm going to lead Hitmonchan and Primarina again, and I'm going to bring back Excalibur and Sarina. And this is it. Everything on the line here in Game 3. As we see the Garganackle lead again with the Ninetales. Okay, so they are doing the Sun mode again. They might just try to burn Hitmonchan right away this time, but it's pretty safe for me to fake out into Ninetales and... or I could even switch back Excalibur into the Hitmonchan slot right away. They've liked to go for Protect so far, turn 1 though. Of course, I can read that and go for Calm Mind this time instead of switching Primarina out. Let's switch Hitmonchan out to back Excalibur and click Calm Mind. If they've conditioned me and they don't protect, that would be pretty cool by them. They just go right for the Salt Cure. That's pretty bad. Well, here I'm just gonna throw off an. I'm just gonna rip an Icicle Spear. I thought about the Terra Ice, but I don't want to be weak to fire in this position. So I'm just gonna rip an Icicle Spear and a Moonblast into Garganackle. They might protect it now, but you know, I'm just gonna hope not. Okay. It is loaded dice Icicle Spear. It hits 4 times, and Moonblast KOs. Okay, so we broke Garganackle quickly this game. That might make all the difference, genuinely. I definitely want to pivot Primarina out now, though. We see they brought both Weathers this time. We see the Politoed. The Foul Play from Ninetales is doing some damage to back Excalibur, and I was going to say I'm less worried about Muddy Water, but actually the Politoed was doing a lot of damage to my Pokemon with Muddy Water last game. I think I'm just going to Glaive Rush Politoed here and go Sarina. Pivot Primarina out. If they keep the Rain up, then I can maybe land a big Hyper Voice later, although it's already going to be tough with Primarina below half HP. They switch Ninetales out to Scovillain. Terra Dragon Politoed. Would have been pretty cool if I landed that Glaive Rush, but they got me with the Dragon Terra Blast. That's a cool tech, for sure. I'll go Hitmonchan here. Just Drain Punch, Politoed. They can Rage Powder if they want. Do you think this is the time for Acupressure? Because I can't rage. Serena is immune to Rage Powder. Is it? I'm gonna Terra Water for sure, but is it Acupressure time? Into Hitmonchan? I don't know if it'll accomplish anything, but it'll be really cool if it does. Let's do it. They protect Politoed. Burn Hitmonchan. The Scovillain also has Will-O-Wisp. Hitmonchan gets an accuracy boost from Serena. That's not ideal. I guess if they get a Muddy Water drop, we can overcome with that, but... Man, I could definitely still lose this. Having Will-O-Wisp on both the Ninetales and the Scovillain is such a problem. Especially when they saved the Terra Water, or the Terra Dragon Politoed for Game 3 and surprised my Baxcalibur with that when Baxcalibur was a big part of my Will-O-Wisp counterplay. So that's really well orchestrated by my opponent. Let's try to get rid of this Scovillain. Unfortunately, Trop Kick is not at all safe into it, of course, because it double resists. Politoed at least can accumulate some Life Orb damage. But both of my Pokemon being burned is a real problem. And Hitmonchan takes so much from that Muddy Water. Oh, it was a crit. Maybe that's also what happened in Game 1, I don't know. But I'm gonna keep attacking into the Scovillain. And I guess I'm just trying to win with Primarina in the back. But not that confident. Unfortunately, they get the accuracy drop into the wrong Pokemon. I'd be unfazed if it were Hitmonchan, but it's not. I'm just going to Mach Punch Scovillain and hope it doesn't have Protect. And go for the knockoff into Politoed. And then, yeah, I'm just hoping I can win with Primarina in the back. But Primarina is low enough that it's... I mean, Primarina is immune to the Terra Blast, and Rain is about to end, unless they pivot and set it back up. Okay, we get rid of Scovillain. They'll have Sun nerfing their Muddy Water. So I think Primarina can beat Politoed. Missing the knockoff isn't ideal, but I don't think it's like game-breaking. But Primarina is just so low that if they have damage into it, like if the Ninetales has a surprise Solar Beam or something, it's just kind of cooked. Let's protect and see what they do. They protect Politoed. Ninetales goes for Heat Wave. Okay. I feel like I have to Hyper Voice here. I think the Ninetales is the greater threat than the Politoed just because it has its boosting weather. Burns Primarina, that's so bad! I don't get Leftovers recovery now. I don't think I can win at this point. I think I just need them to miss every Heat Wave the rest of the way. It might have been doable without the burn, although I'm not confident that it was, but I think now, yeah, I just need them to miss every Heat Wave while I KO Politoed and then finish Ninetales off. And I guess they know that because they go for Foul Play. They got me! Alright, the Alaskan Absols run ends here. That was a really tough team to prepare for. And they pulled out a lot of good surprises this set, so really well played by my opponent. And obviously we'll see what they do the rest of the way, but after storming back through the last few weeks of the season to get the number 5 seed in the playoffs, the Alaskan Absols are out in the quarterfinals. Thanks for watching the season. It's been a wild ride for sure, and I really enjoyed this set. But, of course, I'll still be covering the rest of the playoffs from here, and we'll start with the rest of the quarterfinal sets right now. Okay, feels a little weird to have so few replays open in my browser right now, but it's the playoffs. Teams are dropping quickly. This is how it goes. The last set actually just finished a little while ago while I was getting the first part of this video ready. So I get to record this one a little bit earlier than usual. Definitely am happy about that. But we're going to jump right in with our 1 versus 8 matchup, the Dallas Dragapults versus Drago's Strongest Warrior. It was, I believe, a 2-0 win for the Dragapults just last week, and we'll see what the Strongest Warrior do to adjust. But we see Rain from the Dragapults here with the Pelipper and Basculegion. We see Riolu. Again, I keep focusing on the coaching, even though they've shown that Riolu is perfectly capable of doing more. But it has a lot of possible coaching targets here in Rillaboom, Basculegion, and even Donphan. We have the Raichu maybe covering for Zebstrika, although we can see here that they didn't bring it. But Raichu also just could be threatening strong damage into Corviknight, and maybe even Tyranitar, depending on its set. That said, it might have to watch out for Grookey and maybe Gastrodon, again, depending on its set. But there are a lot of different ways that the Dragapults can attack here, and I'm sure they're just trying to keep their options open and find the best configuration to go with. On the Drago's Strongest Warriors side, we've got Tyranitar, Corviknight, and Comfey, a very familiar mode where Comfey might keep either one of these teammates happy to just... happy? Well, yeah, healthy, and therefore happy to just set up or just throw off attacks and snowball through the opposing team. But they also have a fast option with the Lycanroc if they can get weather control with the Tyranitar. Admittedly, that might be hard into this rain team. Gastrodon can redirect water-type attacks, although we saw the male Basculegion running Mold Breaker last week, so Gastrodon is not necessarily that reliable, but there's also the Grookey to help cover for that, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Comfey has priority Giga Drain or something. But let's jump in and see how this quarterfinal set went. We see Comfey and Gastrodon leading against Donphan and Rillaboom. So Rillaboom putting out a lot of offensive pressure immediately. But the Gastrodon goes Terra Dragon right off the bat. Comfey protecting around a Fake Out. Donphan setting up Iron Defense. Whoa, hold on, whoa. So, okay, Gastrodon... I mean, I think it makes sense. You probably don't anticipate that Gastrodon is going to take a Fake Out. If Rillaboom wants to target Gastrodon, it's probably just going to throw off a Wood Hammer or something. So Gastrodon going right for the Terra Dragon and trying to Whirlpool Donphan, which I guess would break Sturdy and potentially... Although, honestly, I wouldn't put it past them to be running Sand Veil in this matchup, but it would break a possible Sturdy, and it would make it somewhat easier to counter this setup that Donphan is going for. The Iron Defense Donphan is suddenly going to be a lot harder for something like Tyranitar or Corviknight to break. But if these two Pokemon could remove it here, with Gastrodon standing up much better to the Rillaboom with the Dragon Terra, then, yeah, that's definitely a possible threat to Pokemon like Tyranitar and also Lycanroc removed for the rest of the game. Although the way that Donphan is just setting up here, I don't know that it's that worried. But in any case, the Whirlpool does miss, and we'll see what these players do next. As Donphan shows the Grass Terra, Rillaboom just KOing Comfey with Wood Hammer, Donphan going up to +4, and Gastrodon misses an Ice Beam, so it must be Bright Powder Donphan, right? I mean, again, you know what? I think it probably is Sand Veil. The sand is not up, so the only way that Ice Beam misses, I think, is if the Donphan is running Bright Powder. I think it's Bright Powder, Sand Veil, Donphan able to set up here. And does Donphan get Body Press? I think it might, and that's very threatening into a lot of this team, but Donphan already making itself very hard to remove here. Of course, it is still weak to the Ice Beam, but that only matters if the Ice Beam hits. We see Grookey come in, but what is it going to do in this position? Okay, it'll Fake Out Riolu on the switch in, and it does just drop to a Body Press, so Donphan does get that confirmed. Donphan, though, taking 60% from that Ice Beam, so that is still a threat to it. As Tyranitar comes in here, I really think it's Sand Veil Donphan at this point, so I think it's going to be harder to hit now. Riolu just going straight for close combat. Of course, Tyranitar is a Pokemon that, in my experience using it in VGC, often wants to Terastallize because it's extremely strong, but it does have a lot of exploitable weaknesses. So with the turn 1 Terra on the Gastrodon, that does take away a lot of options from the Tyranitar. And the Riolu had a safe KO if the Tyranitar didn't Terastallize. They're probably a KO. It could be like a Chople Berry or Focus Sash or something, but yeah, that was an easy close combat to click. Doesn't connect. Gastrodon will KO Donphan here, managing to land enough attacks after all. And recovering pretty nicely with the grassy terrain. Rillaboom back in. Tyranitar just tries to protect again because, yeah, there's not much else it can do here, as we see that it doesn't have anything to survive that close combat. And Gastrodon is now all alone on the field. Its teammates dropped pretty quickly to Wood Hammer, into Body Press, into Tyranitar just being kind of stuck there with no Terra available against a team full of Pokemon that can target its weaknesses. None better than this Riolu. And again, we see the Riolu putting in work with its attacks instead of its Prankster boosted status moves, as it only clicked close combat in this game, and it got 2 KOs. And I don't know what Drago's Strongest Warrior could do in Game 2 this is a really tough matchup for them, and Ninja Meerkat is going the extra mile to show why that is. And if that Donphan sets up again, you just have to. You might just lose to that if you don't hit your attacks, but let's see. We get Comfey and Grookey leading this time against Riolu and Basculegion. So both teams kind of switching up how they approach this matchup. Basculegion switching right out to Rillaboom, though, and Rillaboom will take the coaching. And we already saw that Rillaboom one-shots the Comfey with its Woodhammer. Obviously, it's still going to do that after getting an attack boost, but I think that Woodhammer is going to hit anything here except Corviknight extremely hard. Which, in hindsight, makes me a bit surprised that they didn't bring Corviknight to Game 1, because there's nothing else here that beats the Rillaboom except maybe the Terra Dragon Gastrodon, but then they had to commit that Dragon Terra turn 1 last game, and it didn't even, Gastrodon doesn't even have enough offensive presence that I necessarily trust it to do that. So I am a little surprised in hindsight to have not seen the Corviknight, and I think the Corviknight must be here in Game 2. I don't see how you can leave it behind twice, especially when it is so strong into the Rillaboom, Donphan, and Riolu that put in so much work last game. In any case, Grookey tries to... the after U-Tech on the Comfey is pretty cool, as Grookey tries to surprise the Basculegion with a fast Woodhammer, but it goes into +1 defense Rillaboom instead, does very little damage. And yeah, Rillaboom is just so well positioned here, but I really hope for Drago's sake that the Corviknight is in the back. Instead, we see Lycanroc come in, immediately gets knocked down to its Focus Sash. And of course, Rillaboom can Grassy Glide it next if it's running that. Rillaboom not taking much from that U-turn either, as Grookey just doesn't hit very hard, and Rillaboom has boosted defense. Tyranitar comes in, they have that and Lycanroc together, but... and Tyranitar does have the Terra available, so it won't necessarily just drop to a close combat this time. But if this Rillaboom has Grassy Glide, what do? You can Accelerock it, but how much is that going to do? Well, we won't find out, because Lycanroc does just drop to a Grassy Glide. Tyranitar, once again, stuck just protecting. I think that's the only move we've seen it click so far in this set. As Grookey comes back in, and it's Comfey, and I've just realized we've seen all 4 Pokemon. There still is no Corviknight. Rillaboom showing the Steel Terra, and the Covert Cloak, as it doesn't get flinched by that Fake Out. And just KOs Grookey, and now it's going to be Comfey and Tyranitar. They do still have Terra available, so... I think they just have to hope that Tyranitar can pull this back. We see Terra Dragon Tyranitar. Makes sense, because there's a lot of water, grass, and electric damage from the other team. But the knockoff even doesn't do that much to Rillaboom at +2 defense. Rillaboom has taken out all of Tyranitar's teammates now, and I don't think Tyranitar is winning this one by itself, especially with Basculegion still in the back at full health. That Woodhammer does so much even after the Dragon Terra, oh my god. And Tyranitar misses a Rock Slide. And we see Donphan in the back, but Riolu is going to get the last KO anyway. Rillaboom put in a ton of work this set, but so did Riolu. I think this was a really hard matchup for Drago's Strongest Warrior. I'm not trying to judge them too harshly for being unable to solve it. The Dallas Dragapults are undefeated for a reason, but also they do match up very well into this draft. I am surprised that we never saw the Corviknight in this set, but the Riolu, Rillaboom, and Donphan just putting out overwhelming pressure, breaking through both games, and the Dallas Dragapults move on to the semifinals, where I believe, this being a traditional bracket that doesn't reseed between rounds, they will have to face the varsity Farmboys, another very hard-to-counter team that, as you saw earlier in this very video, has knocked our Absols out in a tough set, so we'll see if the Dragapults can solve them next week. But now we go to the other side of the bracket, where we'll start with the Flatland Flat Sands taking on the Azurbe Chatots. Flat Sands do have the duo of Whimsicott and Typhlosion. They also have Mudsdale, so side beat up into Stamina is a possibility as a check against heavy-hitting physical attackers like Kingambit and maybe Gyarados with the right Terra type. The Gyarados also is no doubt covered by this Jolteon, which also puts out offensive pressure into Pokemon like Ludicolo and Skarmory. Chatots haven't even brought the Gyarados, but definitely some checks for that on the Flat Sand side, which makes sense and is important. The Toxapex also could have put in a lot of work against the possible Gyarados, but enough about the Gyarados because it isn't here. yeah, a lot of possible... So, basic possible setup options for the Flat Sands, Whimsicott, Typhlosion, Whimsicott, Mudsdale. Clear matchup pieces in Toxapex and Jolteon, able to counter team certain parts of the opposing lineup. And then the Clefable, you never know what Clefable is going to do, right? It's such a versatile Pokemon, but I'm sure they're patching up some weaknesses with it in some way. And on the Chatots side, we see all three of Kingambit, Hatterene, and Sinistcha, so the Trick Room mode is very much a possibility, which makes sense against fast threats like Jolteon and Typhlosion. I don't know what the Skarmory does in this matchup. I think Skarmory makes sense to try to counter Mudsdale and have some strong counterplay into Lucario if they try to set that up, which of course they didn't bring, but if they had. So I could see that actually. We might see that come to a game to help deal with the Mudsdale. And then the Heat Rotom maybe can stand up to Typhlosion and hit hard back. Maybe threaten Whimsicott, maybe burn something like a Lucario. So definitely a lot of options to counter team each other on both sides, but we'll see who got the better of whom here. We see Sinistcha and Hatterene leading against Whimsicott and Typhlosion, so fast mode against probable Trick Room mode. We see Fairy Feather Hatterene, makes sense, can get off a strong Dazzling Gleam into Pokemon like Lucario and Honchkrow. Although of course that is resisted by the likes of Typhlosion and Toxapex. And we see Citrus Berry Sinistcha. Yep, I've used Sinistcha a fair bit lately. Check out my Mono Ghost videos to see how that went. I do like Citrus Berry a lot on that Pokemon. It can sit on the field surprisingly long. Terra Water Sinistcha immediately covering the fire weakness. Typhlosion will go straight for the Eruption. It still does a ton of damage to Sinistcha, which gets back up over half with the Citrus Berry. And then if it took another full power Eruption, it would be KO'd, but it doesn't look like it will because Scald, even in Sun, does a little bit more than half to Typhlosion. So that Eruption is nerfed for the rest of the game, and Hatterene protected and took no damage from it. Typhlosion just going right for the Terra Fire, and Fake Tears into the Sinistcha, so it's still KO'd by roughly half power Eruption, which also does a ton of damage to Hatterene. The Typhlosion not caring at all about getting its Eruption nerfed by taking damage. It's in the Sun, it just goes Terra Fire, you know, all the multipliers it can get. And yeah, Whimsicott guaranteeing the KO on the Sinistcha means so much for that Pokemon sitting on the field for a long time. The Terra Water slowed Typhlosion down a little bit, but not very much. And Hatterene has his Trick Room up, but it's taken a ton of damage already. Kingambit comes in here. Hatterene and Kingambit are pretty well positioned in Trick Room. Typhlosion will switch out. Hatterene will KO Whimsicott, but the Kowtow Cleave into Mudsdale does less than half and gives it a stamina boost. And I believe Mudsdale is the slowest Pokemon on the field, right? Min speed 36, so... Oh no, Hatterene is slower. Okay. And I assume Hatterene is running min speed. But we see the Clefable come in here and just switch right out to Typhlosion. Flat Sands maybe either changed their mind about the play there or just pivoting around trying to stall out the Trick Room. I guess the latter makes a lot of sense. We see a Fairy Feather boosted Dazzling Gleam. Does a lot of damage to both Pokemon, but no KOs. And Mudsdale will just KO Kingambit right back with his Body Press. So, I liked the Chatots positioning in the Trick Room, but they did need to start KOing some Pokemon, and the Hatterene was not able to do that into these two. I guess Clefable also made it feel relatively safe to click the Dazzling Gleam. Of course, Flat Sands have seen the Fairy Feather already, so maybe they're switching. Maybe the point of switching Typhlosion in is to have that resist and deny that KO that's so important as the Trick Room turns are ticking down. And yeah, the Kingambit is gone. We see Skarmory as the last Pokemon. It's not even going to wall Mudsdale that well when Mudsdale has the +2 Body Press, I think. But also, Skarmory just doesn't have much offensive presence. And I was about to say we still don't know the Flat Sands' last Pokemon. We do, it's Clefable. But even with the Steel weakness, Skarmory is just not doing that much damage, I don't think. So if Hatterene goes down, I don't know that the Chatots have enough firepower to win this. We see the Clefable come in now as the Mudsdale tanks another Dazzling Gleam and lands a heavy slam into the Hatterene. Mudsdale, exactly as I said earlier in the video, and by the way, I do record the introduction segment before I watched the replays. I had not watched this set when I talked that through, but I said that the Flat Sands have won a lot of sets, a lot of games, by having Mudsdale just be incredibly bulky and grind through what look like tough positions. And we've seen it do that here, KOing both the Kingambit and the Hatterene. It's the last turn of Trick Room. Mudsdale drops, but Clefable gives itself the life due, and now Typhlosion is going to come in. It's faster than Skarmory, presumably. I'm sure it's not relying only on Eruption for Fire-type damage, as we actually see it land the Heat Wave there. Even if it had missed, the Clefable clicking Follow Me means Typhlosion would have gotten another chance. And Typhlosion really popping off in this game, doing a ton of damage early on, and then sure, it took some damage itself, but it pivoted in and out. Never, always making sure that it didn't take enough that it would be KO'd, and in the end, it was able to close this game out once the Trick Room ended. So we'll see how the Chatots adjust in Game 2, but yeah, they need to make more of their Trick Room turns if they go back to that game plan. The Hatterene just wasn't doing enough damage, and the Kingambit didn't get the opportunity to do its own damage, and they couldn't get enough KOs to target the Typhlosion in Trick Room, so the Typhlosion was able to come back in and win. But let's see what happens in Game 2, as it's Rotom and Kingambit leading against Clefable and Typhlosion. Okay. We see the Expert Belt Kingambit and the White Herb Rotom. That means that after one Overheat drop, it will be able to get rid of that drop and have one more full power Overheat, or any other special attack. Yeah. Clefable can just click Follow Me, and Typhlosion can Eruption. It can Terra Fire if it wants. Kingambit is under a lot of pressure here. Rotom less so, but yeah, we'll see what the adjustment is from the Chatots, because I'm not sure right now. Kingambit protecting. We see the Follow Me. It could be like Electro Web from the Rotom. Get some spread damage into Typhlosion. It takes so much from that Eruption. And no, it's the Thunderbolt, which doesn't do too terribly much to Clefable. So Typhlosion is safe and sound here, still at full HP. Kingambit goes for the double protect and does get it. So that's some good luck there, but Rotom will be KO'd, yeah. So that turn just accomplished nothing for the Chatots. Losing Rotom there, it might have been a roll, I don't know, but losing Rotom there with Kingambit still not able to do anything means that Typhlosion is free to just keep attacking here. Clefable still clicking Follow Me. Typhlosion lands an Eruption, it KOs Kingambit and almost Ludicolo. Ludicolo is able to hit back with the Muddy Water. So I guess if they'd led Ludicolo, it's a different game. But yeah, there was no way to switch Ludicolo in because the Typhlosion was doing so much spread damage, and I assume it would be faster than Ludicolo on the next turn. So the only chance Ludicolo had was to come in here and get the Revenge KO, but Typhlosion did so much to its teammates, taking out two of them and doing a ton to Ludicolo as well, before Ludicolo had the chance to come in safely. It's hard to see the Chatots pulling this one back. Clefable still at half HP. Now we see the Toxapex come in, and yeah, I don't see how Ludicolo and Sinistcha are going to break this Toxapex. So we saw the Typhlosion do a ton of damage in the early game, and now the Flat Sands go back to bulky, grinded out kind of gameplay. The Toxapex can fish for poisons here with Poison Jab. Okay, Sinistcha actually gets burned by Clefable's Flamethrower. Clefable will get knocked out here, but it sets up Toxapex for the KO into Sinistcha. And now we see the Mudsdale. The Mudsdale doesn't look that strong here. Never mind, Terra Grass, it does. Well, I was going to say I think the Toxapex will win anyway, so the Mudsdale doesn't have to be strong here. But actually, Terra Grass Mudsdale turning the tables on Ludicolo. And yeah, the Flat Sands played that really well. Typhlosion just doing so much damage early in the game with the opponent not able to do anything about it. And then the bulky Pokemon in the back just being too much for the last couple Pokemon on the Chatots side to take down. So in the end, I talk about, they haven't leaned that much on the Typhlosion this season, but we saw it to put in a ton of work this set, and this is the value of strong Pokemon, right? There are a lot of interesting Pokemon on the opposing side, but none of them take an Eruption especially well, not even the Rotom. So Typhlosion, it's so simple, but Typhlosion next to Redirection, able to just spam Eruption, and the team just melts to it. And the Flatline Flat Sands move on to the semifinals, there's one set left to cover. Another Week 8 rematch. Last time, Big Time Sand Rush got the better of the Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold, but the Maushold look like they've been training in the mountains here, so we'll see what comes from that. Big Time Sand Rush bringing that Fire Water Grass core that I talked about. Espathra is here, probably able to open holes for the Superior, but we could also see a Calm Mind or some kind of setup Gothorito like we've seen in the past, and who ever knows what this Flamigo is going to do. On the Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold side, we do see the Meowstic with the Flapple, Dipplin, and Maushold. So probably probably a gravity game plan here. It could be something like Scarf Maushold again, even Banded Maushold if they want, with Dipplin and Meowstic both helping it reliably hit the population bomb. Flapple, we know, does a ton of damage with Grav Apple and Gravity. I could also definitely see Meowstic setting up Psychic Terrain for the Armarouge, and then the Hisuian Decidueye is just one of their strongest Pokemon, but also specifically is strong into, well, depending on how it's trained, as casters say, potentially strong into Tauros and Superior specifically. But let's see here. And Ice Cube if they'd brought it, but they didn't. Okay, Volcarona and Gothorita versus Meowstic and Maushold. So Meowstic also could just run Fake Out, but yeah, I'm definitely alert to something like Gravity Population Bomb if I'm on Robbie's side of this. Of course, the Volcarona with Flame Body is not an ideal Population Bomb target because I think each hit is a chance for a Flame Body burn. Certainly there is a chance. Population Bomb is a contact move. And of course, neither of these Pokemon can switch out, so the Maushold is maybe in a little bit of an awkward position, but maybe you just Population Bomb the Gothorita and try to deny whatever it wants to do here. We see Terra Ghost Maushold, so it actually can switch out next turn if it wants. We see the Gravity and the Population Bomb into Gothorita, and damage racking up quickly. I don't know if this even can miss, but certainly it's likely to KO, and it does. So if Gothorita had some crazy game plan, we don't get to see it here. Volcarona going straight for the Quiver Dance, presumably Robbie knowing that it's not a very appealing target for the Maushold. And we see Tauros come in, it gets an Intimidate into Maushold. Gothorita isn't trapping anything anymore anyway, so Maushold would be able to switch in even without the Ghost Terra, but we have seen the Ghost Terra. Flapple coming in Gravity, though. It can threaten a very strong Grav Apple into Tauros, but again, that's not that strong into Volcarona, and we see Volcarona able to put in a ton of work against really this entire Biblically Accurate Maushold team here. There's not really any Pokemon here that likes dealing with a Volcarona. Armarouge has trouble if Volcarona gets set up, or even if it runs Struggle Bug, although I wouldn't bet that it's doing that here, but you do have to be alert to that. There's no bug resist here except the Terra Ghost Maushold now that it's terrestrialized. Maybe there's some other Terra type on this team, but that won't be available this game. They're not doing great for fire resists either. It's just Armarouge possibly running Flash Fire, and we don't know that it is. It resists fire anyway, but yeah, letting Volcarona have a Quiver Dance in this matchup is really hard for this team to deal with, and Volcarona leading next to Gothorita meant that it could trap the opponent in an unfavorable position. Again, Maushold being probably scared to attack Volcarona. Maybe you just have to do that in that position. I don't know, because once it gets that Quiver Dance, it might just run through this team. We'll see. Maushold wasn't a great offensive threat to it. I mean, it was okay, but do you risk the Flame Body? And now Flapple, you could try like a Dragon Rush, but yeah, we'll see. Okay, Tauros protects. There's the Psychic Terrain. And Volcarona just one-shots Flapple with Fiery Dance, so we won't get to see the Flapple do anything. Maushold back in. Armarouge switches in, looking to throw off a big Expanding Force, I guess. Maushold does go for the Population Bomb into Volcarona, but Volcarona gets the burn immediately. But will this KO? I don't think it will. No. Maushold is going to drop to burn damage, or to the double up. Okay. I didn't even mention the Terra Psychic Tauros yet, but I imagine that takes an Expanding Force a lot better than Fighting type Tauros does. But these Pokemon are just hitting so hard, and the Biblically Accurate Maushold, they went for their combos, but they just didn't have the speed and power that they needed to break the Psychic Tauros, which is an interesting tech for sure, but especially the Volcarona. I mean, whatever Volcarona game plan you have, we're going to have to see it in Game 2, because it looks like it just feasts on this whole matchup. But let's see. Volcarona and Tauros leading this time against Meowstic and Armarouge. So I think it's just trying to get a strong Expanding Force. I think that's the anti-Volcarona tech before Volcarona gets to set up. I mean, it might work. We see Gothorita switch in here. Terra Dark Armarouge. But now it's weak to the Bug Buzz. Almost gets KO'd, not quite. There's a lot of damage back. And we see the Gravity connect, but Volcarona able to KO the Armarouge, and now we have Gothitelle going for the Calm Mind. So last game, Volcarona was in a strong position to go for the early game setup, and it did, and it pretty much swept. This game, Volcarona attacking right off the bat is creating an opening for Gotharita to... I might have called it Gothitelle earlier, I'm not sure, but creating an opening for Gotharita to set up. So, Robbie showing really well here how you can play a team with flexible threats like this to keep your opponent off balance. We get the Maushold coming in here. It could threaten a KO into, I think, either of these Pokemon, but we see the Volcarona has Rage Powder, so it's going to make that decision for Maushold, and it's going to get a Flame Body Burn again. And Gotharita not taking much from Meowstic's Dark Pulse. That is the one huge weakness of Meowstic that we've seen throughout the season, that it just doesn't do very much damage, whether it tries to or not. And Gotharita taking advantage of the opponent's Psychic Terrain, I guess after getting confirmation that they have it in Game 1, running the Expanding Force to counter the opposing Psychic Terrain strategy is really something, and it's actually hitting pretty hard after that one Calm Mind. Maushold connects with the Population Bomb, but Maushold is burned. That's not doing very much damage. I don't think it's going to KO. It could with a crit. No crit. The crit Dark Pulse, though. Hold on. Dark Pulse did 17% earlier, and with the crit there it did 24, so I'm not... I don't know that KOs without the crit. Of course it could flinch, so there are multiple ways that Meowstic wins that, but yeah, the crit might have saved the Maushold this turn at least. Well, okay, no, because it gets KO'd by Raging Bull, but Spooky just barely staying in it, potentially, with that crit. As we see a Spothra come in against Decidueye, though. We haven't... Oh, Spooky has used their Terra already, the Terra Dark Armarouge. So Decidueye doesn't have a way to get out of its Psychic weakness here. And again, we know Meowstic just doesn't do much damage. Dark Pulse does less than half to the Espathra. And the Espathra is also running Expanding Force. So the Psychic Terrain really being turned around on its user there. Lumina Crash doing a lot to Decidueye, not quite KOing. But the Dark Pulse does not get the 2-hit KO on Espathra, and Tauros outspeeds Decidueye and KOs it. We see Terra Bug Espathra going for that last KO with Pounce, not quite getting it. It'll drop to Dark Pulse, but Tauros will clean this up. And the Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold have been a lot of fun to watch this season. They've run some really interesting strategies that have, again, kept a lot of opponents off balance. But the sheer power of the big-time Sand Rush draft was too much for them to break through this week, as the Volcarona and Gotharita both put out so much pressure, and then Tauros and in this game Espathra were able to clean up in the back. And so all 4 of the higher seeds have advanced this week, and I don't know what's going to happen the rest of the way. There are 4 extremely strong teams left. Obviously, the Alaskan Absols are out of it, but that's okay. I started this season not playing and just watching all the sets, and we're going to close this out the same way. So I'll be back next week for the semifinals, but all of these teams that are left are just incredibly hard to deal with, and now they have to try to deal with each other. I'm really excited for the semifinals. I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll just have to tune in next week and find out.